Excuse me, Mr. Bobb. Member of council, I'd like to make a motion. And the motion is that we as the city council members approve the settlement agreement between users and others versus the city of Petersburg.
Vice Mayor.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Bobb.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith. Aye. Vice Mayor Perm.
Aye.
Mayor Myers.
Aye.
That motion's passed. Now you may have the floor, Mr. Bobb.
Good afternoon. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council and citizens of the City of Petersburg. My name is Robert Bobb with the Robert Bobb Group, and I'd like to give a presentation this evening with respect to our approach to addressing the emergency financial and operational restructuring of the City of Petersburg organization over the next 5 months and the work that we've done to date. The agenda for this evening is I'd like to give you an orientation of the team that we are bringing on board and have brought on board, give you an idea, a concept of our program management office and the governance in terms of how we structure our work, our 5-year plan, our 5-month plan, I might add, our executive summary, our specific focus on the fiscal emergency of the city, both in our short-term focus as well as the long-term focus, the issues we've identified in week 1, which requires immediate resolution for the city, our plan of entry in terms of the work that we're doing, and a transparency with respect to our work over the next 5 months. And I believe this is important. The way we're organized, I have 10 representatives of my firm who will be involved over the next 5 months. Our work actually started last week. Myself as our project executive, Patrick Bobb as our quality control, who is responsible for ensuring that the quality of the work that we're doing is in fact representative of our commitment to the city. You've met Colonel Terrell, who is the interim city manager. We have Dalif Rajan, who is our strategy and analytics expert, as well as Nelsie Birch, who came to the microphone this evening. She is supported by 2 professionals who have extensive experience in accounting and revenue analysis, George Arthur and Ann Stewart. We also have a team from our firm of CPAs. We have 3 of those individuals who will be responsible for reviewing the accounting functions of the city, where we see that there are some significant issues both in the accounting and in the finance of the city. Our program management office is the approach upon which we work. Our approach is basically to stabilize the financial operations of the city. Once those are stabilized, is to execute the financial recommendations and establish a long-term fiscal operating platform for our city. Our key activities will be our financial officers meetings, our document collection and review, our data analysis and our long-term analytics capability, our weekly progress reporting and sharing finding, our meetings with key vendors and identifying any funds that are to be collected by the city from wherever those funds are to be collected. Anyone who has a connection with the city, our goal is to collect every dollar, every penny that is owed to the city of Petersburg. We have our project plan. We have a number of tools that we will be using, which are our action log, our meetings, our tracker. For every activity that we're engaged in, we will identify risks that are associated with those activities. Our weekly status report and our shared with leadership, and more specifically, our plan, our turnaround, and our restructuring plan. Our program management office will have specific governance as we work through as we perform our work. We'll manage the data, the information. We will have an intake process. We have several levels upon which our program governance work. Our strategic level, which is our short-term fiscal plan, long-term fiscal plan, our organizational planning, our sustainability and operating platform, our operational, and then we have an operational level, which is how we manage the project plan, our data governance, our delivery management, and then finally the tactical level, and that is the document meetings, minutes, report weekly status, and I will manage our document security. The key behind this program management office is that when we leave, the city will have a treasure load of documents upon which future city managers, directors of agencies will have information. Currently, it's difficult for us to go to one location within the city and compile all of the information that we need to do our work. So everything that we gather, all of our analytical documents, all of our financial operational documents, all of the organization planning documents, all of those will be managed through our program management governance office, and then all of that information will be left behind for the city staff. I might also add that the staff person who's been assigned to our work, we're going to help to train that individual on we'll give them the tools, as it were, to perform these duties and to have that level of expertise available to the city once we leave and move forward with our work. We have designed our 5-month plan, and our 5-month plan is our tool of demonstrating our delivery so that we are focused every day, that we're here away from the city on the deliverables that we have contracted to deliver for the city, and that we have a 5-month plan that keeps us focused on our work, as well as the 5-month plan that can be delivered not only to city agencies but also to the community in terms of total and complete transparency. And our priority for month 1 is a laser focus on the city's financial operations. Our next slide is a basic summary that answers the question, at least for us, a question that we've heard from time to time: how did we get here? And I'd like to share with you our summary of how we see how we've gotten to this point. The city faces, let me see if I can just put it in a simple context. The City Council adopted a budget in one July, or a date in July of 2015. That budget year ended on 30 June of 2016. Keep those dates in mind. The city faces a financial emergency currently of approximately plus or minus 18 million in accumulated arrears up to the period ending 30 June of 2016. In March of this year, the city received a report from its financial advisor, Davenport and Company, and that report, if I can put it in the simplest and crudest terms, basically said that the city's house is on fire. Do something. Take some action. This was in March of this year. That report was delivered to the city government. It doesn't matter who's in charge. But whomever was in charge, and I've been a city manager for 30 plus years, as well as the budget director, the budget assistant city manager, and the interim city manager, when the budget for a municipality is approved, there is always a mid-year adjustment. Come in the mid-year, you see where you stand. Is the budget in balance? Is it not in balance? If it's not in balance, you should take some form of some affirmative action. Our research shows that in March, when the city was alerted to the fact that it had a significant financial problem in the previous fiscal year, we can't find any documentation in the public arena where action was taken pursuant to a budget that was adopted from 2015, the 20 fiscal year 16 budget, when the city was given notice in March of this year. So, as we move forward, at the prudent action would have said that I have this document. It says my house is on fire. It says that I have a financial problem. And at that point in time, all of the resources of the city in March should have been gathered. The public should have been made aware of the problem. City agency directors should have been convened. A plan should have been put in place, no matter how difficult it would have been, as to how we were going to end the last fiscal year without a significant deficit. That conversation we cannot find actually took place in the public documents that we reviewed. And so the city ended its fiscal year, based on our research, on 30 June of this year with an 18 plus or minus budget deficit. And then to complicate matters going forward, the City Council approved a current budget in July of this year, which was a balanced budget, but in fact, it was not a balanced budget because you made significant amendments to the current budget. And now we have a balanced budget which we will recast to ensure that that budget is in fact balanced, that the decisions that were made were in fact implemented, so that we can have, we believe that on the date that we were employed, we own the numbers, and we do not take anyone's numbers and accept them without verifying and documenting them, so that we're satisfied that the integrity and the credibility of our work stands pursuant to how we perform our work. And so as we move forward, I might also add that I've managed cities from the West Coast to the East Coast and in between, including the school district, by the way. We always met our comprehensive annual financial report, the CAFR. We believe that, we just want to put the City Council and the public on notice that that work has not begun. And the auditor of accounts for the state has a specific deadline in which municipalities has to present its comprehensive annual financial report. We're concerned and we don't believe we're going to make that deadline. We have an external auditor, hasn't been engaged, so we're scrambling. I just want to put everyone on notice in the event that headline, City of Petersburg did not meet its annual comprehensive financial report. We believe you're going to have a lot of difficulty in meeting that November 30th deadline, but we're going to work hard and find meetings. The other question, and this just for historical purposes, which I think is very important, and that is the city's financial decline actually begun from cash standpoint in 2009. It didn't start yesterday. It didn't start last week. It was in 2009 when experts provided the city with analysis of its finances. And in 2009, the city's cash position was not in the black, but in the red. And so management, for good and sufficient reasons, would have started to balance its budget, the city's budget, starting from 2009 to the present. As you can see, the deficit from a cash standpoint cascaded to where we are today. So you have to put these, you know, this isn't new discoveries by the Robert Bobb Group. It's just basic research in trying to find how do we get to where we are so that it's in the public's eye, as it were. Our next slide. Our next slide is, although it says data provided by Davenport and Company to RBG, it is really a cash analysis provided by the city to both Davenport, and now we have that cash analysis. And we are, you know, our accountants, we're working to ensure that these numbers are really representative of real cash, and we have to meet with the treasurer, with the commissioner of revenue, and all of the other agencies. But I can tell you that in November, based on this analysis, until we can do some further research, we're going to have a problem come November. And so I don't want anyone to be surprised that come November, when we don't have sufficient cash in the bank, that we do not have a problem. So based on this analysis, which was the analysis conducted by the city, we are re-verifying it, but we're going to have a problem come November, if everything just stays the same as we go forward. So this slide really represents, this picture is, you know, when you say there are checks in the drawer, these are accumulations of checks made out to vendors that have not been sent out, dating back to January of this year. So there are checks in the bank. And we all know that you issue, if you write a check and it's not cashed, or you put it in your, you know, in your desk at home, over a period of time, you get to reissue that check. And so we're going through that process now. So, our focus is on the fiscal emergency of the city. And so our immediate focus is on the short term. And we need to identify areas to ensure that fiscal 2017 budget is realistic and that it's balanced. We have to obtain a short-term loan, which is typical with the city issues, a revenue enhancement loan. And we've been working with the city's financial advisors, we're working with the city government, and our goal is to come back to the city council within 2 weeks or less and update the city council on our efforts to secure approximately $6.5 million in short-term borrowing. And the short-term borrowing will allow us to pay some of our vendors. It would allow us to permit us to cover those months when we have shortfalls in our cash. It will allow us to keep the city's operation going forward, but it requires us to monitor the city's operation daily, and that's being done. The good news is that the city previous administration, they're taking a look, they took a look at what's in the bank every day. We had a meeting with the treasurer today, and so they set up a process, and we're going to continue that process. We need to know how much we've taken in on a daily basis, but it's not just a matter of how much we've taken in, it's also a matter of whether or not we're sending the bills out. If we don't send out the bill to those who owe the city, we will not receive any revenue coming in. And so that's another part of our focus. So we have to address the need for short-term borrowing. We'll come back to City Council with a series of recommendations. We're working really hard. We're knocking on wood. We're hoping that the capital markets out there are listening to us and that there is some respect and that they will be willing to provide the city with some short-term funding. And so we're very hopeful in that regard. And that would take care of the shortfall in the current budget of $6.5 million. But remember I said we finished last year? Well, last year's budget ended with the 18 plus or minus $1 billion problem. And so we've got to get that load off of our backs to go forward. And so we're working and we'll come back to City Council with a strategy and a plan within the next 30 days to address the long-term fiscal emergency of the city. So we're working in tandem. We're working on short-term, we're working on long-term. We got to get this straight before we take a deeper dive into the overall city's operation. And I heard someone tonight make a very important point. One of the questions we asked was, if there's a budget, give us the actuals to budget, which is pretty standard. We can't find that information in the city currently. So, moving forward, next slide. And this is very difficult to see, so I'll rush through it real quickly. We've identified all of the issues of areas in which we have worked in week one. The $18 million budget deficit for fiscal year 2016 and prior. The $6 million in invoices we have to address that are unpaid within the 2017 year, not accounting those that are in previous fiscal year, about $18.some million. The budget, we believe, is unrealistic. It lacks transparency, and it has not been appropriated or made available to the public. So that, and I'm only speaking because we've gone back and we've done the research. We've read all of the city council meetings going back because but we can correct this. It's not rocket science. We can make this happen. We want to map the processes in the finance department as well as in every area. And basically our mapping is that this is where we bring in our team that looks at business processes. We look at the business processes, we come up with a plan, we map those business processes, and then we have that available for the next person who comes on board so they can see how the business processes work. And then we put them all on a video spreadsheet, and then we build around those, we build policies, practice, and procedures around all of those processes so that 5 months a month after we're gone, new people come on board, they can see all of these business processes and how business flows. And so we're going to do those in some of the key financial areas we're going to focus on first as we move forward. And so I might also add that part of what we've looked at is all of the vacant positions in the city. We will be I'll just go quickly. We will be evaluating every city agency, director, and below. We want to know that we have in place a staff that is capable of taking the city to the next level and implementing the plans and strategies that we bring forward. The public has some ideas and plans and strategies. We want to hear those. There aren't any bad ideas. And so we can run the business analytics around any strategy that someone comes up with. And then we will bring all of that information back to the City Council for its consideration, for its review, and for its comments. So quickly, I'll just go to the slide with respect to our data collection. We have collected a lot of data over the last few days, I might add. We reviewed all the reports. Some of the reports have been presented to the City Council. The report from the Commonwealth. We met with the Secretary of Finance for the Commonwealth of Virginia. We met with the other individuals from the governor's office. I might also add, we have heard on a number of occasions that the state funding to the city at one point was $23 million. That the state funding to the city is somewhere like $9 million. We have brought that matter up to the state. We brought that matter up to the state. This week, I had a conversation with a higher state level official, and we're going to receive, and we'll make that available to all of you, to the City Council and to the public. We're going to receive a document that gives a 5-year spread of revenues from the state to the city of Petersburg, so that we can see if state revenues either increased, decreased, or whatever. But we just need to have the documentation so that if there are any urban legends out there where the state owes this or that, you know, we want to be able to bring that matter forward. And the state has been extraordinarily cooperative, I might add, extremely cooperative. As a matter of fact, today we received a note from the state officials in the governor's office where they want to convene yet another meeting with us with respect to not only the city's funding in progress, but also school funding in progress as well. And so we've also provided, you know, we have these significant audits. The most recent audit, of course, is we have a review from the. Let's go to the next slide. We have a review from the Federal Transportation Administration that's reviewing the Petersburg area transit system. We haven't had an opportunity to get our heads around that. They've requested a meeting with us, but before the meeting we received another document wherein they actually assigned a consulting group to come in, the Federal Transportation Administration it is, another group to come in and further do a deeper dive and review of the area transit system. And so that's something that's new on our plate as of today that we will be working through. Our bottom line is that we have a very experienced team. We've had excellent cooperation from within the city's staff. And then my final request to the Mayor and City Council is that within the next 2 weeks, we'd like to work with your office, Mr. Mayor, and Council to schedule a work session with the City Council. And that work session will be on current finances, and it'll be an open public meeting, current financing, long-term financing, and a little deeper dive on our findings and our strategies for going forward. And also to give you an update on where we are with respect to the deliverables that are in our contract, whether we're in green, yellow, or red as we move forward. So thank you all very much.
Do you have any further items, Mr. Terrell? Okay. Item 11, Clerk of City Council.
All right, Mr. Bobb, council member has questions for you.
Mr. Bobb. Yes. You said in March of 2015 that there was some information saying basically that the house was on fire. 2016, that the house was on fire. Who was that given to? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. That's the reason why I'm asking the question.
Maybe I shouldn't have used the fact that the house is on fire. What the report basically is a financial report that shows that the city has significant problems with cash, and it needed to address its budget then. That report was delivered to the city. Members in charge of the city in March of this year. That report was delivered. We cannot find any documentation that some action was taken with respect to how do we bring last year's budget in balance. But we do know that starting in June, July, the state came in, the FM came in and made its recommendation. But under it's not normal, it's just best practice, period, in local government, that when you adopt a budget, you come and you have mid-year adjustments to that, mid-year review of that budget with the administration, with the city council, and if there's a need for making adjustments, then you start making those adjustments. And I can tell you, it becomes really hard. The later when you have a budget problem, the later you find out in the fiscal year that you have a budget problem, instead of cutting $1, you now end up cutting $5. So the early budget warning is very, very important. I'm glad you asked. We're also going to produce a budget calendar for next year because we will be gone when the city council considers its next budget. So we want to create a budget calendar. We want to get some finance. We want to get our recruitment process in place. We want to work with city council so that you have a permanent city manager as soon as we possibly can. We're not trying to get rid of Colonel Terrell, but no city should be managed by a team of interims. Period.
Mr. Bobb, just a question. But I understand what you were saying. Was there a letter that was presented that you found? Who did that letter that you know of went to?
The letter was delivered to the city government. I assume they're on city manager, and I can provide you with a copy of that document, which is dated, I think, March 12th or March 7th. We have to provide everyone with a copy of that document. And that document, you'll see that basically the cash issues that the city faced, no amendments that we can find was made to that budget.
So basically, it was delivered to our then city manager at that time that you're aware of.
Whomever was on record as being in charge of the city at that time when the document was presented.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mr. Bobb, thank you for your interview report. Two couple of items in reference to you talking with the state about the $13 million approximate. That had been brought up twice before. Once it was in a town hall we had, and also at the public hearing that was at the high school made mention of that. And there is a spreadsheet that covers that. So we thank you for pushing to get that information. One of the other items,
that's a good example of feedback that we're getting. So in terms of if that information had not been given to us, then we may not have been in a position to query the state with respect to that information as quickly as we had.
so it had been put out there, so we appreciate you pushing that for us. I had one question when you were talking about actions and following up. You mentioned about the 10% reductions as far as the payroll. Does the payroll actually show a 10% reduction?
I don't want to put Nelsie on the spot, but she has a team that's working today. What we're trying to do is to document whether or not the 10% across the board was in fact implemented. And so what we're doing is we're pulling all of the salaries for everyone, where they started, what their salaries reduced after the city council approved the amended budget, the implementation. So when we have our work session, we'll be able to tell you exactly where that stands. But we're redocumenting those actions that were put in place back in August, September. I might also add that we also are conducting 2 interim audits. One of the interim audits we will be conducting is an audit on the medical health care insurance. We just want to make sure that what the city is paying for health care insurance or the city's contribution is in fact for the employee and not for the employee and other members of his or her family. We have found that to be the case in some other locations. We're also going back and looking at all of the overtime that's been accrued by various employees of the city to determine whether or not there is documentation pursuant to the overtime that employees have received. I might also add that someone brought up cell phones and all of those things are on our plate to look at everything. Our goal is to touch every place where a attendant is being spent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bobb, for the presentation. I just wanted to ask you about the status of resignations, because I see we had approximately 190 resignations.
Yeah.
And how are there many more in the pipeline, or?
We don't know, but we don't know, but I can tell you from my experience, whenever you have a blanket cut, you tell employees you're going to take a salary reduction, 10%, 20%, 15%, whatever it is, you have an exit of employees. And what we find is that we have employees we've had a movement of employees who've left the city in the last few months since the salary reduction went in place. Our goal is hopefully we can restructure the city's finances in such a way in which we give that 10% back. The other side of that is there's a step that, everyone has this different step, but one of the steps we like to take before we get to the salary cuts across the board is that we like to go deep inside each of the organizations and determine which services are not legally mandated that we're providing. And those non-legally mandated services are the ones to go. And then the other thing is, when you look at the roster of employees taking a cut, you may have an employee who is a public works employee who is, at a lower level in the organization. 10% cut is a huge cut, whereas a management person who is making $200,000, a 10% cut is not that significant. So it doesn't mean that at the end of the day, because they have a difficult financial situation, that you don't ask everyone to take a cut across the board. But it's just, our preference is to do all of the analytics around it and then come to the city council and say, based on our analysis, based on the analytics, we are left with no other alternative but to say to the workforce, you have to participate in helping us to get out of this fiscal crisis that we're in. So it becomes a participatory process.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, because that's where we want to start moving towards right there. So, thank you.
The next item is item 11, Clerk of City Council's agenda. I have no items. Item 12, City Attorney's agenda. Mr. Preston, do you have any items?
I don't have anything this evening.
Thank you. Item 13, closed session, not necessary. Item 14, adjournment. This meeting's adjourned.